Welcome to the emite podcast, the podcast that helps you unlock the value of your data. Hi, my name is Kollman Gearhart. I'm an account executive with emite, which is a Prophecy International company. And I'm just really excited today to have you join Jonathan and I when it comes to breaking down data silos, which is currently up on our blog, on our website, emite.com. And I am currently an account executive for the team based in North America. And I am going to introduce you now to our global head of product and strategy, Jonathan Boyd. Welcome.
Hey there. Hi, Kollman. This is going to be quite interesting. I think it's a really interesting topic. And it's something that comes up quite regularly with a lot of organizations striving to try and find the right way forward. But a lot of it's taking a long time and posing significant challenges, which we can dig into.
No, absolutely. And I mean, in today's digital era, data is really the lifeblood of every organization. And as I'm talking to customers or potential customers, it really seems, particularly in the contact center, there's a way to understand if your data is getting siloed or if it's something that is being organized in a way that allows efficiency within your organization. And that's really the key of this conversation today, is to make sure that we're highlighting the importance of data in the digital era for contact centers and CX. And I would just right out of the gate would love for you to talk to the listeners about really what are data silos and how can we better understand them?
Sure. So I think the key point to look at is understanding where they came from, first of all, because it helps us to understand what they actually are. So when you look at the history of really business architecture, how businesses are structured, then you see that there is a commonality going all the way back to Henry Ford when he created the production line, where you have relevant people in each part of the production line. The kind of workflow, if you like, goes along them. Everybody does their part. And effectively at the end of it, you have a car. And it was based on a principle of, if you take a whole load of resources, you put them together in a certain way, you are guaranteed to generate value, in this case in the form of a car. The reality with the change in economic models from Samuelson's to Core has really challenged that concept. Now, economists are regularly changing. They have various different models. They work in different ways. Everybody's heard of data's the new oil, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
This is where it comes from, because economists are very much looking at what is and understanding how it works. So it's a science.
Gotcha.
With organizational structure, it hasn't really changed in all that time. Very little of it has really changed in terms of the structure. So you'll have, IT, you'll have finance, you'll have HR, you'll have, maybe the CX side. And while maybe the names of changed, and maybe we've even got more silos these days because of more different business functions, the underlying principle is still there. And it's fed by things like budgeting, for example, which is why zero-based budgeting is becoming more and more popular. Because just like certainly here in the UK, with the governments, the budgets are assigned, they've got to use those, in order to get the next year's budget. Whereas with zero-based budgeting, there is no budget. You have to put forward the right business case to be able to unlock those funds for what you're looking to do. And that's where I think a lot of changes as well around things like ADRA, so activity-driven resource allocation. Start small, innovation, don't really know, business case isn't complete, and that helps you kind of move forward. However, none of that solves the fundamental problem that in each of those business functions, they've got tools, they've got processes, and they've got activities happening all the time that generates data. And it's in their own little area.
Right.
And that way, when you want to access it all, you've got to try and go across different business functions, or you've got to go through IT to try and kind of go underneath the silo or the function in order to get it from a technical back end. All of this is causing significant challenges to businesses because nobody's got the true 360-degree perspective.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I thought it was really neat going through that blog post because you really list some important strategies to, as you mentioned, kind of recognize when there is a data silo and how to prevent it or overcome it. And one of those, as you walked into it a little bit, was implementing a centralized data warehouse. Could you explain a little bit more about kind of getting to that even playing field of having things centralized rather than maybe a little bit more sporadic?
Yeah, of course. And I guess there's kind of two schools of thought. One is the current, which is more around centralization. So many organizations are trying to achieve that kind of that mythical single source of truth, where all data feeds into a single data lake. The reality of this is that they more often than not become a data swamp. Different APIs, even from the same solution, offer different data at different rates. Naming conventions can be different. The vendors might have data pipelines, which means things change after the fact. They get updated, more accurate, etc. All of this leads to a lot of challenges when you're trying to rely on it in that way. Now, ultimately, you still need somewhere to be able to report from. Right. And you need to be able to see the breadth across all those different silos that we spoke about. So really the strategy that I recommend here is use the right tools for the right business areas. For example, if you talk about CX, which is our area of expertise, the people who know what a good insight is versus a bad insight are not the data people. They understand data, they understand structures of data, and they are very technical, but they don't understand the nuances of customer experience. The people that understand that best are your CX leaders, your CX practitioners, your contact center people. They know it.
Right.
So in order to support this kind of move and make sure you get it right and don't end up with a data swamp, what you have to do is effectively empower those business functions to be able to collate the data at their level, at the domain level, be able to create the right kind of insights, get rid of the noise, basically.
Right.
And share that into the data lake after that has been done and out to the wider business as a product. So it's really a kind of data mesh way of thinking. So there's probably a misnomer around, is that centralized? Is that decentralized? Ultimately, things go to one place so that it can be used for the greater good of the organization. But what it's decentralizing is the governance and security, making it far easier to control the quality and the security of your data.
Gotcha. Yeah, it kind of makes me think, I'm a big fan of analogies and all of the moving parts that data entails, right? And it actually makes me think of a pocket watch or a really nice watch on our wrist and all of the entities and cogwheels and moving parts and how to make that organized and efficient so that watch tells you what the time is. Can you maybe talk to the listeners in regards to, data in today's day and age, Jonathan, is incredibly valuable, but being able to organize it and understand it is what makes its value its worth. So maybe talk with us a little bit about how companies and organizations can mesh that.
Yeah, so I always use the pocket watch analogy because I think it works very well. When we're talking about an organization, you often think of it in the same silos. So while we talk about structures of business, there's also the siloed mentality. And because we've worked in those structures for so long, it's very difficult to see outside of them. We think in those terms.
Hmm.
And when you look at the pocket watch, you flip the pocket watch over, you open the back, and you look at it. And if anybody's been lucky enough to look at a fine Swiss piece, they'll see all the intricate workings, the cogs all touching each other. You've got the kind of ruby washers and all sorts of very finely tuned mechanisms. It's a system. Now, ultimately, the pocket watch only has one purpose: to tell the time as accurately as possible for as long as possible. So every one of those components is part of a system. So if you make one cog heavier or lighter, faster or slower, harder metal or softer metal, that does not improve the watch's ability to tell the time more accurately for longer. In fact, it actually has the opposite effect. So we have to start thinking outside of these and understanding, as part of a system with a common purpose, what is the best way for us to work right across that. So remove that kind of siloed mentality. As I say, if you think about that pocket watch, we're effectively all different cogs in that bigger system, and our purpose is to tell the time. So what is the end result for any initiative should always be focused on that. And that's why data is so vitally important, because in every industry that you want to think about, in today's day and age, it is becoming very apparent that the ones that are most successful are the ones that are able to harness and use the data that they generate faster.
Right.
And if you think about it in the terms of customer behavior, customer expectations has never been higher in terms of the service we expect, and it kind of comes from kind of your mobile phone interface. So when you think about your personal life, you download an app, you try it, don't like it, get rid of it, try another one, move on. And that behavior, we're thinking, well, that should be how it works all the time. That's just how technology should be. Plug it in, plug it out. And this is where the whole composable sort of architecture comes from. It's trying to address that behavior. Now, when you have that capability in an organization, it means that every bit of resource that you expend. So if you think about your organization like your energy bill, so you're expending energy for a reason. It's cooking, lighting, cleaning, hot water, your heating system or your cooling system if you're in Denver. All of these things use up energy, and it's exactly the same in your business. So everything you do, every process you fulfill, every activity and task is using up energy. And the objective is to be able to really kind of capture that in order to ensure that you're getting something for everything that's expended. If you really look at most organizations today, there is a huge amount of wasted energy. We do it for various reasons, but does it help tell the time faster, more accurate, etc.? No. And there's certain reasons why we need to do it. There might be regulatory requirements. So we have to do things in a certain way so that they are auditable in a certain way. And that's okay. We have to accept that. There's a trade-off. But there is still a huge space for wastage.
Right.
This is where concepts like lean, etc. all came from, when trying to reduce that wastage. And a lot of organizations maybe have gone too far, where what they're actually missing out on is that bit of time where you turn around in your chair and you think.
Yep.
Rather than doing, you just stop and you think. And this is why being 100% utilized is not good. It's dangerous for organizations, because as we see, innovation is paramount to providing customers with those new experiences that they require all the time.
Yep.
It's not about adding technology. All of the technology that's there, chatbots and all the rest of it, and self-help, has not improved customer experience. In fact, it's made it worse. It's at an all-time low.
Do you believe that made it more just confusing, Jonathan? Or like, is it harder to navigate because there's so much out there?
Yeah, I mean, everybody remembers, I'm sure, where they've had a problem, they've gone onto the website, they've tried to find how do I speak to somebody, and you can't. First of all, you've got to go through self-help. So you go through self-help. Did this help you? No. Let me try something else. So then you go through a chatbot, and then you go round in circles in order to try and get to somebody. And that's what creates a worse experience. There are times where a chatbot is what I want because I don't want to have to speak to somebody, don't want to wait in a queue. Very simple, just need an answer. How do I do this? Or can I have? Or something along those lines.
Right.
It depends on the kind of demand. What I think organizations are really bad at the moment is understanding the context of the customer and deciding what the right route actually is based on that context. Instead, they're probably looking at the wrong kind of data. So coming back to your earlier question about why data is so important, delivering customized experience means you need to understand the context of the customer. The context of the customer is continually changing. Therefore, you need fast, efficient flows of data to know exactly what's happening. That way you can personalize that experience, route people through the right and appropriate channels, give them the right choices, and still maintain acceptable levels of operational costs. So you have to look at both qualitative and quantitative data to do it.
Yeah, no, that's well said. I mean, it actually sparks a former conversation I had with a potential customer that was in the healthcare industry, and they really strive themselves on response time to calls answered. And that KPI, that performance metric, was something that they were known for their particular region in the United States, so that there was peace of mind for their clients to know that when they're calling in for any sort of medical need, they were going to get that response time. So when it comes to data and performance and really kind of meeting the needs of all of these businesses trying to serve their clients, one of the things that I know you're pretty adamant about is being able to have these data silos not be affected amongst each department. And sometimes when you are centralized and you do have a data pool, sometimes it can get a little bit confusing on pulling data from one organization or the other within a business. So can you maybe talk about the importance of fostering that cross-department collaboration?
Absolutely. And I think there's many different models out there. Business relationship management is a really great way of being able to help foster that kind of relationship. So using BRMs to effectively go out into the business and really start sitting on the other side of the fence, understanding what each function is actually doing and helping to create a consolidated understanding of each other's need. And we see it all the time in many different organizations, and over many customer discussions, you tend to get focused on your area. So thinking back to Henry Ford, you're on the conveyor belt, you're just thinking about your bit, screwing that nut down, putting that door on, whatever it is. That's what you're thinking about. You're not thinking about the guy in the next kind of section to you who's putting the tires on. And therefore, what you miss out on, and this is where data comes in again, what you miss out on is the relationship. So if you think about what I said about being 100% utilized isn't good, that ability to just think. Everywhere you look in your business, you will have relative constraints. And the best people to understand the way out of that is the people doing the role, doing the job. They know it better. They can provide the information that's right, as well as all the tools that you use that are generating these days in cloud systems. Now, if they were able to just think, well, if I do this just a little bit different, that'll save the next guy X% of time. Let's give that a try and see if it improves the overall. And if everybody was to start kind of fostering that kind of culture with data and saying, okay, we've gone through the data, we've got rid of all the junk that isn't really necessary. These are the really good insights into what's happening, what we need, how to improve from our perspective. Sharing that out to the rest of their business if everybody starts to do that, then what you've actually got is a really good culture of sharing data, and being able to look more holistically at your organization to see how do we improve. So I think it's a vital change it's kind of like an evolution.
Right.
Everybody wanted to get everything dumped into the data lake because great, okay, fire it all in there, that'll be good. And what we ended up with is kind of like, the little bag where you keep the Scrabble pieces.
That's right.
You kind of ended up with that. There's a whole load of words in there, but you've got a lot of work to try and get them out. Whereas I think if we just spend that little bit of time with a piece in the middle that helps simplify ETL processes and all that kind of difficult element that's usually dealt with by the data team, just simplify it, make it easy to manage, load the data through, organize and structure the data by each of the domains in the business, and then feed that into the data lake. You will have a much, much better chance of success.
Yeah, I mean, on the same topic of evolution, is a lot of these businesses don't just have one location, they could have multiple locations. And to have access to that data lake is pivotal no matter where you are in the country or where you are in the world. And one of those ways to do that is to become more cloud centric and implementing and embracing cloud-based solutions. So can you maybe walk the listeners through the importance of having that data lake in a cloud environment?
Sure. So I think the importance is the scale of data has increased exponentially. So the story I tend to talk about here is if you think about Tesla. One of my friends actually bought Tesla, so I tried to convince him to let me have a look at what data is actually being recorded by Tesla, and it is amazing. Everything is being recorded. Yeah,
I remember you sharing when we were able to join our partner Genesis at Genesis Experience here in Denver, that you shared about a Tesla and how much data it's not only ingesting, but keeping track of. So I'd love for you to walk further into that.
Oh, totally. And, cut a long story short, all the jesting between friends, it was about 10 gig per minute or every couple of minutes or something. 10 gig. So if you think about that as one car, now if you're a car hire company and you've got a fleet of cars globally, many thousands of cars, that's many thousands of 10 gig chunks every minute. So suddenly that data is just astronomical. You cannot do this on premise. There is no way to be able to take advantage of newer technologies that will help you make sense of that data on premise. That's where cloud really comes into its own. The infinite scalability that it has, and really the access to technologies that are coming out from another one of our partners, Amazon, and various others. Some people use Google, they use Oracle, etc. All of those services that are available to help you make use of it. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't try and do things in a shoebox. The cloud's there to use it. It's built for large data usage.
And I just love too how you mentioned, Elon Musk will put out the plans on how to build a Tesla online. You and I could both access that now, but the value of that vehicle isn't in the build, it's in the data. Can you explain that?
Yeah, sure. So this comes back to what we said earlier on. Data is so important. And it's kind of it's an interesting thing. It's kind of hidden in plain sight. You're right. You can download the blueprints for Tesla. So if you can go and create one without fear of copyright infringement, clearly the value is not in the vehicle. The value is in the data that it creates and its usefulness. The value that has is incredible. For example, Google, you don't pay to go and search. But what they do is they use the data of everybody who's searching and what they're searching on. Now, that's where they make their money, because everybody bids on keywords. And it's kind of been known for quite some time now that that's where the value is. So it's not always in the product. A really great analogy here is when you think about McDonald's. Now, it's been going around for a while, so most people realize it by now. But McDonald's don't make their money from selling burgers and fries. They make it from the land that they rent out to the franchisees.
Yep.
A property business. And it was part of their scaling. If you read really about who they are and where they came from, when the brothers got to so big with their own restaurants, they couldn't scale anymore. They couldn't get to that next level. And along comes a very smart businessman and goes, hang on, I think I've got an idea here. I can't do it. We can't do it. But everybody else could. So let's use this business model. And that's how it evolved. And I remember in one of the conversations we had, you mentioned Starbucks.
Yeah.
Another big brand. And I think, you know, on reflection of our conversation, there is a slight difference actually with Starbucks, because when you look at the financials, they still actually own a large number of their own stores that are not franchisees. So they still have just over half, I believe, of their revenue coming from actually selling coffee. But that still leaves a massive chunk that's coming from other things. And you can see a perspective, I guess it's maybe a business decision from them, but you can see a point where that might actually tip over and they might not be doing it. Because certainly in the UK, it's all franchisees. So basically that's paid up to the owning company in the US. But it's a very interesting model. And I guess different companies deal with it in different ways.
Yeah, the whole scalability piece is what resonates with me from what I'm hearing from our customers and potential customers is how does the data play along with some of those decisions to grow the business, right? And I think being able to embrace things like, you know, a data mesh architecture and being able to embrace advanced analytics and AI, like what we've talked about earlier, is one way to do it. But can you maybe speak to when it does come to finding ways to not only prevent the data silo in your current construction, but when you're scaling, how can you scale with your data to have it help your business?
Absolutely. And I think the only way to truly provide scale is, coming back to your earlier question, is through use of cloud technologies. When we start to think about, you know, Amazon Sidewalk, the amount of data that's going to generate, how that'll impact smart cities, you know, smart infrastructure, all of these things using algorithms, constantly changing, constantly adapting. If you're not thinking about this now, by the time you feel the pressure and the stress, it's going to be too late. We need to be thinking about where this is going and help set up a structure that is scalable. And it's very much like what the software industry went through a little while ago, from monolithic architecture to microservices. So if you break it down into independent, scalable components, then you can scale regardless of what gets thrown at you. You can scale. You can keep moving forward. There are ways. It kind of greases the wheels, if you like, allows you to start moving. Whereas with a lot of the older structures, both in terms of business and a lot of what people regard as best practice, because they all come from, I guess, a kind of older time, actually create more drag when you're trying to change, and it stops momentum. So if you want to scale and use data, really what you have to be able to do is you have to be able to make sense of it. You have to be able to use it. You have to be able to make it actionable so that you can actually, you know, do something with it that's going to be measurable. Is it taking you closer to or further away from your purpose? And it comes back to that pocket watch again. Yep. You know, helping you tell your time accurately as your customers require it. If it isn't, stop doing it. Don't waste the energy and the resources on those things. And there's always something we could do. It's a decision whether you want to. Is it the right thing to do? I mean, as a head of product, I face difficult decisions every day where, I have a customer who needs one specific thing, but I have, 500 other customers who need other things.
Right.
I've got to balance the resource usage to what is going to give the best to all of our customers so that everybody benefits and make it as fair as possible. And the only way I can do that is looking at the data and seeing what it's telling me and being able to ensure that I'm not missing anything. Because one of the greatest points that people tend to miss is the bits that fall through the gaps. The relationship between those different data points. That's where the value is, not the data elements themselves, which tend to be simple stats, but it's the relationship with them. If we have, you mentioned a company in health where they're prized on answering those calls.
Yep.
Now, let's just suppose a fictitious situation where we have a company that answer really, really quickly. They're well known for being really, really quick. But if that's a healthcare situation, I'm probably more interested in getting the help I need than just being answered fast.
Right.
If you're going to ask me to wait 15 minutes extra, but I know I'm going to get things sorted out there and then, I'm probably willing to do it.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And I also appreciate you sharing a little bit more about your role and kind of where we stand at emite, because as much as we're helping businesses understand their data, helping them scale, helping them be more efficient, we as a business have had a lot of breakthroughs recently in kind of evaluating ourselves, where we are in the game of analytics and how we can improve and grow. And part of that is this really exciting integration of e-iPaaS, which I believe is a concept that is really going to play a pivotal role in facilitating data integration and breaking down these data silos. I'd love for you to walk the listeners through a introduction to e-iPaaS and what we're up to here at emite.
Yeah, absolutely. So, these are not just anecdotes. We as an organization go through this. And as I look at my background, 20 plus years of consultancy, helping organizations to better use technology, you see that this is a recurring theme. So if you're listening to this and going, I recognize a lot of this, don't worry, everybody does. We're all going through this. It is an evolution. And what I did when I took over this particular role, I looked at the kind of demands that we were getting. The first one was all about data ingestion. So the highest demand was we want more data faster, etc. Just like what any BI, MI department will also be facing at the moment. But as a software development business, using traditional collector architecture, if one customer asks me for email field to be added to that collector, I've got to add it for everybody. So all 500 customers have to now have that. I can't just do it for one. And likewise, when more complex and specific requirements happen, you have to continually keep building that in. So if you've got 500 customers, you release a function, guarantee you're going to have 500 different ideas on how that function should work. Who's right? It's a very difficult situation. So what we did was we actually got together as an innovation team, and we started to look at many, many different industries to gain insights and thoughts around how else could an integration be achieved, because almost everybody was using collector or connector architecture in some way or another.
Right.
And what we realized was that there was indeed an entirely different way to think about integrations. One that actually allowed complete customization and full data control, end-to-end control to a customer, but made it easy so that they could actually do it without the need of a PhD in data science. As long as they just understand their business, their data, and a little bit of knowledge of what an API is will help. So that is where e-iPaaS, which is Integration Platform as a Service, was born. We investigated many other competitive solutions under the iPaaS umbrella, and none of them were able to provide the kind of speed and data types that are predominant in the customer experience industry. So we created our own, and that is completely unique to ourselves. It is the first of hopefully many innovations that the team will be coming out with. And we are actually just about to go through the penetration testing, which will open the door to moving that into the production environment. So it's a fascinating time.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating and also exciting, and also being able to tap into more of that efficiency. I remember before we jumped on the podcast that you were sharing about how much data we were able to really, kind of sift through at this current time. And I was just unbelievably complexed and excited that you were able to ingest that much data and how much more efficient it was. Can you maybe walk the listeners through that statistic that you were talking to me about?
Yeah, sure. So you're relating this to the benchmarking that we've done. So we've basically been pushing about 400,000 records per hour through iPaaS. And it has been able to keep up with that very well, which is many times what our customers currently are doing. And we've been able to, not only that, but bring certain efficiencies around parallelism, so technology efficiencies, to be able to do this, which is why it is so unique in terms of, our business. And, look, let me share with our viewers a kind of happy accident, to kind of quote Bob Ross. We have obviously the development environment, we've got a QA environment, and we've got a staging environment to go through the whole software process. And by accident, on one of the QA environments, we dropped a couple of services that basically held up the iPaaS solution. So everything is, in constant flux at the moment, as all development areas are. And it was probably out while we were doing these changes for 7-8 days, something along those lines. But what we noticed when we turned all those services back on, which is why I relate to it as a happy accident, is that iPaaS immediately started blasting that data into the Elasticsearch database. So even though it had basically been crippled in terms of the services going down, it was actually working. It was still making all the API calls, pulling in the notifications, getting the data ready, getting it prepared, following all the processes, and it was literally queuing it up, waiting for those services to come back online, and then just push that all through. And because we have the capabilities for auto-scaling, we could literally see the volumes of data suddenly jump and get over that sort of 7-day period where the data hadn't been steadily streaming into the database. All of that literally just get forced through.
Yeah, I mean, that is just an amazing statistic and kind of an exciting way that we are looking to innovate here at emite. And I want to really kind of tie this all together, Jonathan, because I want you to put your hat on as if you're a business owner, and maybe you've come across a situation where you're starting to see some data silos within your organization.
Yeah.
Based off of some of these strategies that we've discussed today, what is kind of step one when it comes to not only understanding that you have a data silo, but some of the first steps to overcome it?
So I think the very first thing to do is have a very clear picture of your purpose. So, going back to that analogy again, what is your business purpose?
Right.
What is the problems that you solve and for who? And everything really radiates from there. So once you have a clear understanding of that, then you can start to say, okay, how can I measure getting closer to or further away from it? So the impact of our activity. If you start to think about everything as being a kind of a consumption of energy, where are you spending your energy? Is it getting us there? Is it avoiding other issues? Is it compliance, etc.? Where is it all going? And that's you already started on that path to data, because I'll bet that that information's across a whole load of different tools. You'll have Salesforce, you'll have financial applications, you'll have workflow automation tools. All of that will give you a clear picture of what's currently happening. Start where you are, you know. Look at the tools, look at where the data is, get it all together. Don't assume that you need to know the questions. Because what I find is quite often they're the simplest and easiest things, and it comes back to the often misused Drucker quote of, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. But
right.
The reality is, just because you can measure it doesn't mean you need to manage it. And I often use this when I'm doing presentations. So don't feel you need to know the questions. Identify the purpose, pull in the data, and then start to look for trends and comparisons. And this is where the sort of ML, AI, generative AI, this is where it's actually really interesting, because it can pick things up far faster than what you or I will, if you think about the volume of data that's constantly changing in real time. So use these tools to be able to help you pick out the things that are worth looking at. Some of them may look like they're worth it, but you end up down a kind of alleyway. That's okay, it's just necessary. It's better to learn from those issues than to not look at them at all.
Right.
And it directly feeds into security. With anything that's data and business in general, you have to understand just how big a threat is out there for data security. It is existential for most organizations if it was to happen. So treat it with the sensitivity it needs. Have good security posture and policies in place. And really invest in the people that are driving the data, because investing in them will improve its quality to start with. In terms of education and skill sets, ensuring that they're able to provide it to the best of their abilities. And I think the other one is where I see business today is very volatile, uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous, which I think actually came from the US military, VUCA situations. And it's because they're in the heat of battle, things are constantly changing, the whole context of the situation can go from positive to extraordinarily negative in a split second. And I think that the reality is that that's where most businesses are today, because it's so fast-paced, because it's so quickly moving. Something that happens in an instant can have long-lasting effects on the business. So I think we have to get used to data not always being complete, not always being perfect, and being able to use it to the point of just enough is what I tend to speak to my teams about. Right. And I have this exercise, which was actually, I stole it from one of my friends, Denick. He has this image, very famous painting of a train in the station. And what we do is we start off where it's completely blurred. You cannot make out what the image is whatsoever. And over a series of slides, basically it gets clearer and clearer and clearer and clearer until it's effectively the proper image.
Right.
And about judging where in that is enough for you to know what the picture actually is. Do you need to know each brushstroke, or do you just need to know that the picture is the train in the station? So don't get into that whole kind of paralysis of over-analyzing data. You could always use more.
Right. Yeah.
There's never a point where, you've got everything. So accept the fact that you won't always get there. Be willing to move. At the end of the day, if you're a business owner, you took a massive risk, and it's paying off for you. So now it's time to use technology like eMite to help take that to the next level.
Yeah, and it's just an incredible wealth of knowledge that you've provided today, Jonathan. And as you mentioned, here at eMite, we got exciting solutions on the horizon with e-iPaaS and really being just that valuable asset to the CX analytics and data integration goals that these businesses have. And with that, this blog post that we have discussed today is located right on our website, emite.com, under the resources tab. And it's not just data silos and preventing them that is part of the content on the page. There are several topics and conversations around data and analytics that you're posting quite often. And it's just really an exciting time for businesses to see what's out there, to educate themselves, and also to understand that there are assets out there like eMite that can help. So Jonathan Boyd, thank you again for joining me today. And I certainly look forward to connecting again soon.
Likewise. Thanks, Kollman.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the eMite podcast. We hope that you enjoyed our deep dive into the analytics with eMite. For more information, visit our website, www.emite.com. There you will find articles, case studies, and an exclusive blog post expanding on today's discussion. Feel free to contact us through our website for any questions or insight you'd like to share. Stay curious and keep exploring the data-driven world.